So to start off, do you want to both introduce yourselves for the camera, please?
Okay, my name is Izzard and I work as a KYC banking and fintech manager for Moodys Analytics.
My name is Tom Burden and I look after the KYC banking and fintech team across Europe.
So what are the main issues fintechs are facing in performing the regulatory objectives?
So I think you can answer that in a few ways. First of all, on a day-to-day basis, there's kind of two ends of a spectrum. We have the regulatory issues that obviously fintechs are starting to have to adhere to more now, and dealing with those regulatory objectives as well. You have to look at the way they run their businesses and how efficient their businesses need to be, especially in the world of automation and digitization. On top of that, we have very much things that are in the news that are hitting these fintechs as well as banks, and that relates to things like the sanctions, and Russia at the moment seem to have made big news and obviously made an effect on how they run their businesses and who they are working with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think when it comes down to it, the speed and the cost of filling these regulatory obligations is the main thing when it comes to it. And a lot of what fintechs do when they try to come to compete with banks is they do things faster and more effectively, and to do that they need to do it cheaply as well. If it's going to cost a lot to onboard a relatively small customer, they're not going to do that. So when it comes down to it, the more money they spend doing this, the more is off their top line books, and the more friction when it comes to onboarding there is, then the more difficult it becomes for people to sign up with them.
And I think just to add to that as well, the definition of a fintech has become so vast and wide, and in terms of maturity of fintechs as well, makes it very different about how they are behaving. So as Tom says, a lot of the larger fintechs that we see as well, the challenger banks, the neobanks as well, are starting to behave and work in more of a banking maturity scenario, whilst we then have startups who are looking at different areas and just getting going and meeting their minimal regulatory objectives as well.
Fantastic. And what are any other main trends and themes that fintechs are facing currently?
So, as we said, the main things fintechs are trying to do is move faster than banks when it comes to it. That's their niche, and where we're going to take most of the client base away from it. So most of our customers are all trying to say the same things to us, which is how do we automate things and digitalize how we're working from the KYC and the compliance process is no different. So when you think about what makes a bank slow, it's the fact that they have thousands of people involved in the KYC process, and a person has to look at that manually and has to go to another person. That could take a very long time to do that. Fintech doesn't need to have to do that, but they can use technology to do it in between and set up that process, because they have the benefit of starting from afresh, whereas a big multinational bank has been doing it for many, many years. So yeah, the main theme is always going to be around digitization and automation, alongside making sure that they do enough to keep the regulators happy. I think that's quite a key thing. The word enough is important. People don't want to do too much too often, because obviously it costs lots of money to do these things. But yeah, I think that and using software and rather than people to get to that point.
A lot of our fintech customers have come to us and we support them with their regulatory adherence. But what's layered on top of, as Tom mentioned, is the technology, but also they've started to talk to us and we've started to talk to them and work with them around their customer experience, and actually bringing the KYC processes into the customer experience area as well, and how that affects their customers and how their customers behave with them is becoming more and more important on a day-to-day basis.
And then, so how are Moodys helping their consumers in the fight against financial crime?
So Moodys Analytics has grown over the course of the last, I think, 3 to 4 years now.
Yeah, so 2017 they started on this journey. Yeah,
on this journey by acquiring a number of companies, from Bureau van Dijk to Regulatory Data Corp for screening, and more recently they've been bringing on other firms as well, such as Passport for client lifecycle management and data orchestration, Bogard as well for PEPs on that side, and also Company as well, which obviously helps with multiple beneficial owners and bringing in real-time data. Now, bringing all these separate organisations to a fintech is useful, but actually where we can provide more value to our customers is actually building integrations between all those areas and KYC processes to make their actual organisations more efficient as well. So that's really how we're driving value and efficiency for our fintech customers as well as our other global customers.
A big problem with how people try and approach this stuff in the past is you need a patchwork or a myriad of different sources and providers and going directly to the customer. That's at best like a lengthy process and a costly process, and it's not going to be perfect either. So Moodys, as Julia said, has been making a very big effort over the last couple of years to bring together as many different best-in-class providers that help with this into one place. So people don't need to go to 8 different sources or sometimes 100 different sources, including the customer, to go and get this done. So that's not to say that Moodys have got this sewn up. There's a lot more to do, and there is always other places you can go to get more information, because if you want to do things perfectly, you have all the information in the world on your customer. If you truly know your customer, you have every bit of data on them. Obviously, no one's ever going to get to that point, but having enough is important. So, yeah, the acquisitions Moodys have made around company data, around adverse data from a PEP sanctions and press point of view is really important. But equally, the acquisition of Passport, which provides a software framework and a workflow that basically houses all of that and brings not together just that data, but pretty much any external data source an organisation may need into one place, is really important. And underpinning that with, as Julia said, company, which is a direct access to primary source information, which is integral to doing KYC. If you read a lot of regulations, legislation around the world, access to the primary source information is very important. So the company data underlying that is really important and quite exciting. So, yeah, as I said, no, it's not perfect, and no one's doing it perfectly yet. I think Moodys, through their acquisitions, have made a good step at getting a good percentage of the way there. How far there we are yet, we'll come to see. There's a few more pieces of the puzzle yet, but I think we'll get there.
Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great.